Almost 3 years since my last trip to Scotland, but I'm headed back in less than 2 months. I want to share what I'm doing different this time and why, some things I regret, some things I learned, and a big factor that has changed this round. So stay tuned to find out what that is. And let's break down the trip now versus then. So my first trip, 3 years ago, this time it was September also. It will be September again. Why September? This is honestly a really great time to go. First of all, it's beautiful in the fall, but it's also one of the most affordable times to go. You're going to find some of your best prices then. It'll be a little after the Edinburgh Tattoo, which attracts a large crowd. And so there's a little more availability on hotels and that kind of thing. It's also not in the dead of summer where it's like a heat wave right now in Europe, but it's not quite to the winter when it's just absolutely bone-chilling, freezing cold in Scotland. So it's just a perfect time for it. Now, who I went with is changing also, so that changes the dynamic. On the first trip, I met some friends there. There was a group of 4 of us girls, all caravanning away from our families, exploring the beauty of Scotland together. But those 3 had already been on another trip for about a week prior to the Scotland one. I only flew in for the Scotland piece. So I flew in to meet them and I got there a couple days early. So I was by myself and doing it solo, mostly in the Edinburgh area. Then I met up with them and we went from there the rest of the trip. This time I'm going to be going with one of the same friends who tends to go like every other year. So she is definitely a Scotland expert. And then I'm bringing my mom and daughter this time. So 4 of us again, but a little different. I won't be alone at all this time. And a couple of us are going to be dealing with mobility issues. So it's going to be designed a lot around less walking this time, less hiking, less hills in, say, Edinburgh. So that changes the dynamic a little bit. Now, round 1, the trek that we took around Scotland, we started off in Edinburgh, which is where most people probably land. It's kind of your main airport. Like I said, I spent a little time by myself in Edinburgh, which was amazing. We'll go into that in a moment. And then from there, we started heading a little bit more west in a rental car. Our first stop along the way was Falkirk to see the Kelpies. And then from there, we headed over where we ended up that night more around Oban, which I'd always wanted to see. Along the way, we stopped in at Kilchurn Castle, which was a must-do for me because though this was a Clan Campbell castle, it was actually along the borderlines of my clan, Clan MacIntyre. And I am big into ancestry and I really wanted to see this whole area. It was such a dream to go there. So I had mapped out that we had to visit. This was sort of my Clan MacIntyre day. And along this whole area along Argyll was my MacIntyre lands a little bit. Didn't get to see the full scope. We'll talk about that for round 2 here in a minute. But that was sort of the route we took. The next day, we headed on up into the Glencoe area, which was absolutely stunning, breathtaking and beautiful. From there, ended up around Fort William. Fort William is where we were able to take the Harry Potter train, that's what we call it, but it's really the Jacobite train. This is the famous one that goes along the Glenfinnan Viaduct, the famous viewpoint everybody sees when they see the Harry Potter train and what you see in the movie. We were so lucky to get to actually ride this train and experience it along the way. And this took you to a couple of locations and then back again to Fort William, the home base. And then from there, we drove on through the night to a bed and breakfast. The next day, we headed over to Isle of Skye. We actually took a ferry to the Isle of Skye, drove our car right onto it, and then we only had one day in Isle of Skye, which was another favorite day, just breathtaking views. Had to choose just one activity we could do that day, so we ended up hiking the fairy pools. An amazing experience. And then the next day from there, we headed back on over towards Inverness. Inverness is where you have a lot of your really touristy areas like Loch Ness, Culloden Battlefield on the outskirts. This is kind of your ultimate outlander area and where a lot of tourists come in. So we spent some time in the area doing all of the things. Loch Ness, Culloden Battlefield, some of the stones that inspired Outlander, but they weren't the actual stones in the movie. The next day was another ultimate Outlander day. We started heading back down south through kind of the central part of Scotland, and we hit up Midhope Castle along the way, the ancestral home of Jamie Fraser in Outlander. Doune Castle, a little bit outside of Edinburgh. This one was in several movies. Of course, Monty Python, Game of Thrones, which excited me so much, and Outlander 2. It serves as Castle Leoch, both in Outlander and in the new spin-off prequel, Blood of My Blood, that I've been watching as well. And then we made it back, sadly, to end our trip in Edinburgh, where we had an amazing dinner inside of these little bubble restaurant cones overlooking Waverley Station and a beautiful view of Edinburgh. And we had to finish with an amazing ghost tour at night under the vaults that I have dreamed of. The next day, ended it by flying out of Edinburgh. So that was the route that we took on the first trip. Such a dream trip. I was reeling for years, literally, after. I'm still reeling. But you'll notice that the route that we took was mostly kind of along the west coast, and the furthest north that we went was Inverness and just the Isle of Skye as an island, and back down kind of the central part of the country. We never really went to the east coast, and then there was a few major cities we left out too, like Stirling, Glasgow, a few things we didn't catch. There's just so much to see in Scotland and do, so many things I want to, that it's hard to fit it all in. And it's hard to fit in with 4 girls who all have different things on their list, different agendas. We have to kind of fit in the top things that are priorities to each person. So I want to recap what were my absolute favorites and things that were so worth it to make it absolute priority. And I'm so glad we did, versus the ones that I could have left off. To be honest, most everything was a must-do. I can't say that there was anything that I regretted truly doing, but if it was a priority versus something else I would have wanted to do. I will say my day in Edinburgh was such a dream. Now, it could have been that it was because I was doing it solo, and so I had the freedom to go wherever I wanted to go and fit in as much as I wanted to do, and that was just amazing. And plus, I had a lot more mobility then than I do now, so I was able to navigate all the narrow alleyways, the major mountainous, hilly paths, the steps. Oh my gosh, the steps. So it was exhausting and tiring physically, but so worth it. There's just so many things right there in Edinburgh alone. I could spend an entire week in Edinburgh and still not have accomplished it all. So, of course, in Edinburgh, I hit Edinburgh Castle. You'll want to plan probably a couple hours for that at least. You could spend 3, to be honest with you. Half a day I think you could spend at the castle alone. But I also spent a lot of time over at Greyfriars Kirkyard, basically a big cemetery, and the church there where a lot of history resides. So the Covenanteers, there's a whole area there that you can visit and explore the history in Scotland. We did part of the ghost tour there on the last night as well, kind of creepy at night. Looked at some of the crypts. It was pretty bomb, gotta say. There's also Greyfriars Bobby, the little puppy dog statue. The legend and story of the dog is located there. And of course, a lot of the inspired names J.K. Rowling had came from this cemetery, from Harry Potter. Of course, getting to see the gravestone of Thomas Riddle, that's pretty epic. So I had to visit there, and I also passed by the Elephant House, which is where J.K. Rowling wrote a lot of the books. Didn't get to go inside because it was closed, but got to see the location. I also spent a good bit of time just on the Royal Mile. This is a mile stretch, about a mile is what they say, that runs from Edinburgh Castle on one end and Holyrood Palace on the other. And this is where so much of the history in the city lies. So many museums along the way, statues, memorials, the restaurants and shops as well. Everything is here, all the history. So I toured St. Giles Cathedral, checked out the Mercat Cross area, the old Parliament. We spent some time there on the ghost tour as well, under the vaults as well. I had to go visit the print shop from the Outlander scene down on the other side towards Holyrood Palace. There's, of course, the Prince Street Gardens and just Prince Street in general, which is where a lot of your main thoroughfare is, the Waverly Station there. The Walter Scott Monument, of course, some of your greenways, which all of those Instagrammable shots. So a lot of just taking in the scenery. Also Victoria Street, I got brunch along there. This was what inspired Diagon Alley, just a beautiful street, as well as Cockburn Street, another picturesque little alleyway. So taking in all of these sites was what I spent a lot of time doing in Edinburgh. I just think that Edinburgh was probably a favorite day for me. So ideally, I would love to spend several days there exploring more. So on this next upcoming trip, we will also have another day or two that we spend in Edinburgh as well. So a couple of folks coming with us. My mom and daughter, of course, have never been to Scotland, so they'd like to see Edinburgh Castle, but it's a little less mobility friendly. So I'm really suggesting Holyrood Palace this time, and that's the one I didn't get to see last time. So I'm hoping for that one. There's a few other sites that I didn't get to. I didn't ever get to see the Grassmarket Square, which is where you can look up and kind of see the pub that has the floral arrangement. It almost looks like Rapunzel's castle with Edinburgh Castle up looking down above it. I just love that view. Definitely want to visit the Witch's Well. I didn't get around to that one. The School of Divinity courtyard at the University of Edinburgh. It's such an Instagrammable shot. I passed by the building, but I didn't go to the little courtyard where there's all kinds of fun pictures there. I didn't get to see Ross Fountain either. So those are a couple of must-dos this time. Other favorites. Now, I mentioned the Harry Potter train, which was an experience you just have to do. I mean, to say that we have ridden the Harry Potter train is pretty wild. But I'll be honest with you that it was like 3-4 hours. I don't know, it was half our day. And it was beautiful views, but there's not much to do. You're just sitting there. They do serve you tea and like shortbread cookies, and you just look out your window and see these gorgeous views. So is that how you want to spend your day? I'd almost say I think I'd rather go to the spot where you can see the large panoramic views right there at the Glenfinnan Viaduct where the train's coming in, and see it more from the third person point of view, that famous spot that everybody thinks of. I would almost rather go to that spot. It's harder to do both to see it on the train versus outside the train. So take your pick. Now, I think that I could have done without seeing the Kelpies. That's something you can actually see from one of the highways. I don't think you need to spend a lot of time there visiting the Kelpies. It's a neat monument, but not much to do. Apparently there is actually zip lining inside there. I had no idea when we visited it, and it lights up at night, a really beautiful spectacle, and had no idea that the little streets beneath it are shaped like little horseshoes, because when you're down on the ground and you see it from that perspective, you have no clue. Not going to be doing the zip lining, as I was in a zip lining accident back in January and broke both of my legs. That's why I'm recovering from the broken ankle. So that's not going to be on my bucket list ever again. So that's one that I personally could have lived without, but a couple of our friends are really into horses and animals, so that was a number one for them, of course. Another one that is kind of unpopular opinion. Loch Ness. Okay, I mean, I know it's like, how do you go to Scotland without visiting the Loch Ness? Like, come on. But it was probably my least favorite of everything we did, because it was just a boat ride. We went on the Jacobite, I think, a little boat tour, and we just traveled along the Loch Ness looking for Nessie, and there just wasn't a whole lot to do. That took up half the day as well. I kind of think you could get away with going up there and driving along the coastline of Loch Ness. So you can see it in person, but do you need to do the boat ride? Again, I think that's up to you. It's going to take a lot of your day and just not that much to do. I guess you can come back and report that, yes, you got to take a boat ride on Loch Ness. Claim you saw Nessie. The end. So if I had to choose my favorites on the trip, like the most iconic things that stood out to me of all, I would definitely say Isle of Skye and Glencoe. Those are your two most magnificent, breathtaking views deep in the Highlands. and in those mountains and just the scenery. It is unreal. There's just this mystical feeling. It's magic. It's pure magic, and something that I feel like every person has to experience. Even if you just drive through it, just see and take in the scenery. Stunning views. What I do regret and don't love about the first trip is that we actually toured Glencoe and drove through it, but we really didn't get to stop and visit the memorial and the little village that kind of gives you a history of the Glencoe massacre. And I'm very into history, and this is part of why I love Scotland, is the historical sites and the stories behind them. So on the second trip, we're definitely going back and visiting those spots, and we are going to Glencoe again because it cannot be missed. This time when we visit Glencoe, though, we're also going to go venture over more into Glen Edyff, which truly is the heart of my McIntyre lands. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too, but also Skyfall Drive, which was the scenery and in the movie of James Bond, of course. So I'm gonna hit that too. Since I love history so much, I think for me, my favorites were castles and ruins. I'm a lot more in favor of the older castles and the ruins than I am some of the newer, more working castles, because I love the history behind these ancient castles. I'm into the medieval periods and the old clan stories, not the more modern ones. And so my favorites definitely were our castles that we visited anytime there was a ruin. So if you love more seeing the old castles, I did love Kilchurn Castle. I think it's one of those that's one of those iconic, picturesque scenes that you see in a lot of the photography of Scotland. So getting to visit it in person is special, but at the time they had it closed where you couldn't go in it. I don't know if it's open again or not. So you couldn't really tour the ruins from the inside. You used to be able to, though. I would love to go back and actually see inside. But this was just a very special place to me because I had dreamed of it forever because of the ancestry tied there to it. For your other folks who don't have that ancestry, I don't know if it will be as special to you. So I would say Doune Castle was definitely a must because of the filming sites, but there's so much more history there too. It actually served as a dowager house for a lot of the queens, and tons of history there. There were Jacobite prisoners kept there. I mean, all kinds of history to explore. So I think as much of the castles that you can visit is definitely worth it. And of course, Isle of Skye, which is probably one of the top places people want to visit, and so much tourism and scenery there. Unfortunately, it's hard for the locals to keep up. I don't think the locals love it that us tourists all want to go to Isle of Skye as much, but it was definitely beyond a favorite, and the fairy pools were unlike anything I ever have experienced. Getting to hike those was just an amazing experience. I do hate that I didn't get to spend as much time in Isle of Skye though. So I would say I would love a few days in Edinburgh, a few days on Isle of Skye, a full day around the Glencoe and Glen Edyff areas, and then another week to do other things. There's so many islands also I'd love to visit, but again, we just can't fit that in. So that's probably going to be on the third trip. My friend and I are already planning more of the Outer Hebrides and just island hopping on our next trip to Scotland. But in visiting the second round, what we're planning to do this time, and this time it is more focused on our mobility limitations. So everything's going to be in a rental car. For our time in Edinburgh, unfortunately, we are probably going to have to plan for a lot of Ubers and maybe a hop-on, hop-off bus. I think that's what we're going to do so that we're not walking back and forth all over Edinburgh, because that does happen. You just want to see so many sights and you're back and forth up and down the hills and the stairs, and it's a lot on folks who are limited. So a hop-on, hop-off bus to tour everything and go to the next spot and take it all in one day. And I'm thinking we're probably going to do Holyrood Palace maybe this time, which that one has a little more history with Queen Mary. It's also more modern and more the working palace now. Since I didn't get to see that one before, I'd love to do it this time and visit some of those other iconic spots that I mentioned that I missed the first time. So this time, the trip and the routes that we're taking were more focused on less of those hiking in the really remote areas. Just if something happened, we want to be around people a little bit more and have more resources. So we're staying a lot in the like central south area this time. We will go a little more west again and along the west coast a little bit, but the furthest north we're going this time will be probably just Fort William. We're not really going much further north this time. So from Edinburgh, we'll be touring Stirling because Stirling was a must do. There's so much history in Stirling, and of course, Stirling Castle, the William Wallace Monument. Unfortunately, we may not be able to go to the top of the monument. I would love to, and of course, I hear that the William Wallace sword is there. Gotta see it. So there may still be some mobility issues, but Stirling Castle is something I cannot miss this time. Absolutely cannot. We will also do Dunfermline, which is right outside Edinburgh. This was very ancient history here. Queen Margaret and King Malcolm, who were in the very beginning stages of forming Scotland, way back in the beginning. Queen Margaret was King David's mother, and King David is really responsible for a lot of the churches and the castles and the whole city of Edinburgh, really. A lot of the construction that was built was through King David's reign. Queen Margaret kind of started and set the tone. So much history there, and I've done a lot of research on it, so I had to go to Dunfermline. This was their home, Queen Margaret and King Malcolm in the very beginning, and of course the Abbey and the Queensferry area as well. So have to take in those sites. We will also be going back to, like I said, the Glencoe area and Glen Etive. So we want to see actual Glen Etive this time because this truly is the heart of my McIntyre lands. It's going to be kind of a full ancestral day that day. The regret that I have is very disappointing to me is I'm not going to be able to visit my McIntyre cairn, like the memorial that's set up for the true clan history, because it's very remote and way back in the woods and a hike back there. And that's just something we're not going to be able to do with mobility issues this time. So disappointing because that's kind of my number one. You can kind of reach it through a boat, I think, but I'm just not sure we're going to be able to do it. But just being able to get back to the Glen Etive area, I'll be really happy about that. And we're also going to be revisiting Oban as well. This time we're going to be fitting in chocolate making and a little mountain coaster gondola ride too. So some fun new activities. Another thing we didn't get to do last time was visit Highland cows. We did try to one day, but it was closed because they tend to close on, was it a Monday or a Tuesday? It's like they're open on certain touristy days and then they're closed on other days. And we didn't have it planned right. We wanted to go do a little tea time with the Highland cows and we couldn't. So that was disappointing. But this time Highland cows are a must, especially for my daughter who loves animals. And so that's going to be really neat. We're going to be stopping at a Highland cow farm and also a wildlife safari. So this is all especially for my daughter, the animal lover. And scenery and the animals that you can see in Scotland different than here in Florida. And somewhat nearby Edinburgh as well is going to be Rosslyn Chapel this time. Since I finally read Da Vinci Code, I have to see Rosslyn Chapel. And the only thing about that one is that I hear that they don't allow you to have photography inside, and I'm a vlogger. I'm going to be bringing you guys all these vlogs and I'm very disappointed that I can't film inside, but it's going to be amazing. Really also want to do Rob Roy's grave if we can fit that one in. Another one I've wanted to hit. All this history, you guys. This is all me. And one more from Outlander, Craignadoon. So while we're in the area around Lake Perthshire, we are going to be definitely hitting up the stones. It's not real stones though. There are no stones. The stones were fabricated for the show, but it's the actual hill where they were filming on. We got to visit that one. Also, just found out that Castle Leathers is opening from Blood of My Blood. Well, they call it Castle Leathers in the show. I forget what it's called in real life. I'll put it on the screen. We may have to fit that one in too. And we're also going to have a day visiting the Clan Robertson because that's what my friend's ancestry is. So we're going to have a day for that, which will also involve Castle Blair, which I don't know quite as much about. I'm going to have to research before the trip too. So we're going to try to squeeze that one in. But as you see, most everything this time is going to be situated a lot around the Edinburgh area, the Stirling area, a little bit up into the Highlands, into Glencoe and Glen Etive, a little bit over to Oban. Fort William is the farthest. So not quite as expansive all around the country this time. but it's going to be an amazing trip of history, of animals, of beauty, of wonder. I cannot wait. So as we are sitting down to plan our Edinburgh days, I will definitely be bringing you guys a video all about how to prioritize things to do in Edinburgh. Like if you only have one day in Edinburgh, how to plan your Edinburgh day. So be looking for that video. I'm also going to be bringing you guys all my packing guides, what to wear in September. I've already done one video on it, but we're going to talk a little bit more about different weather. We're going to share a little bit more of the history on some of these sites we're going to. And of course, I'm going to be bringing you guys along for everything on this trip. The second trip to Scotland, I am ecstatic, cannot wait. Let me know any must-do sites that you can think of too. And if you had to go back a second time, what do you think would be your priority next? That wraps it up for today. Thank you guys for watching. I have a whole playlist out there on just my Scotland series if you want to check out everything from the first trip. And pop the subscribe if you want to see a lot more in Scotland. I live in Florida, but my heart is there. I do a lot of Scotland content. I focus a lot on history, travel, and the stories that we find in these beautiful places. So you don't want to miss it all. And I will catch you guys all in the next one. Bye.